Are you a thoughtful leader? Maybe you are. Maybe you think you are. Let's find out. I'm Mindy Gibbins-Klein. I'm author of The Thoughtful Leader and host of the Thoughtful Leader podcast. Thoughtful leadership is all about thought leadership that goes above and beyond. Thought leadership that is truly new and original, exciting, disruptive, maybe even groundbreaking. Because let's face it, we need to raise the bar. My guests and I are absolutely obsessed with finding truly original thought leadership, and I'm going to bring you so many exciting ideas and opportunities, things for you to think about, and chances for you to push your thinking that you'll be very glad you tuned in. So thanks so much for checking out Thoughtful Leadership and the Thoughtful Leader podcast. I look forward to connecting with you very, very soon. I'm sure you've heard the expression diversity of thought. Well, actually, I shouldn't say I'm sure. You know what I think about assumptions. You may have heard the expression diversity of thought. And even if you haven't, it might sound quite obvious. However, I wanted to dedicate a whole episode to this because I have a lot of different thoughts. So I have diversity of thought in my daily experience. And I also understand that generally what we're talking about is getting different people's ideas and thoughts and opinions to make sure that we're not just putting across one point of view. And that's what I'm talking about today. I think I do a pretty good job. So let me start by explaining how I view this and what I do to encourage more diversity of thought. And yes, I see that ghost coming in again. So I welcome the ghost's thoughts as well. If you're not watching the video, you won't know what I'm talking about. Anyway, I digress. I really aim to get diverse guests onto this podcast. Hopefully you've noticed that. It's quite tricky when you have an unconscious bias, like we all have, to ensure that you are broadening things out all the time, being more inclusive and encouraging that diversity. Because left to chance, some people do not get a chance. And I believe that very strongly. So we don't leave things to chance around here. What we're doing here at the Thoughtful Leader podcast is making an extra effort, really putting ourselves out to get more guests who are from Black and Brown and other communities, so different races, different genders, different geographies, different age groups, different levels of ability and disability. And that includes sometimes people who are neurodiverse and, not obvious disabilities. So you can hear me struggling a bit. There are many, many, many different ways to segment the potential population of guests here on the show. And obviously examples that I can use elsewhere. I'm talking about the podcast now. And if you run a podcast, you may want to think about this or think a little bit more, because I was talking to somebody a few months ago and he said, my podcast, blah, 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 blah. And I looked up the podcast and I could not find any female guests. So that was quite an obvious observation. I looked really hard. And then when I called him on it, he assured me that he is inclusive and whatever. I couldn't see any. And I think it was left to chance. And it was just an oversight. It just never occurred to him. Then I mentioned it and I said, I'd love to be on the show, as you do. And hopefully I will be on that show. So he wasn't offended because I thought about it, how I was going to address it and ask the question. And I think I achieved that level of thoughtfulness that we've come to expect. So what have you been up to? Have you been putting articles together and blogs and podcasts? Do you feature different people in your examples? Left to chance, you may find that certain groups just don't make it onto your radar. So I'm here to say that if it's been an unconscious bias up until now, you can be forgiven. And it is hard sometimes to find this diverse group of people to interview and to feature. Well, what I'm suggesting, of course, is that we make an extra effort. That is really giving more people a better chance. That's the extra effort, and that is targeted at certain people who normally maybe they wouldn't put themselves forward for your show, or they don't tend to write as many books, as I've said so many times, or they're just not as visible and vocal, and they just may not be on your radar. Now, of course, you don't have to do this, but what are the benefits? Well, here are the benefits that I've seen through making this extra effort, and it is an extra effort. Firstly, it's so interesting. It's, the points of view and the stories, the experiences, and just the way people share those stories and experiences. I find it fascinating. I really am fascinated by people generally. You may know this about me. And I'm always glad that I reached out and made that effort. And oh my gosh, some of the people I've been able to meet, just by broadening my awareness, they have really enlightened me about different topics, about what they do, what they're up to in the world, but also their worldview, how they see the world. And let's face it, some people are not interested in doing this. But of course, I'm talking to you as a thoughtful leader. And the thoughtful leader goes above and beyond and looks for ways to redress a balance where that balance doesn't exist, level the playing field where that field is a bit uneven, and give that extra chance to somebody who, left to chance, doesn't always get a chance. It's up to you, of course. I said I would talk about the benefits. I'm very conscious that we always keep these episodes under 25 minutes if possible. I think we went over once. I'll aim to keep this brief. There are many other benefits as well. Of course, giving somebody a chance is a great thing to do. They will feel great because you've reached out. You will feel great because you have gone above and beyond. And I honestly believe that having people with different views, different voices, people from different segments of our society improves our society, because we don't live in some homogeneous, as we say, we don't live in a society that is just like one profile. So why pretend that it is when we have written and spoken communication? If you go to an event and there isn't enough diversity, I think people will notice nowadays. So, you may not even be involved in organizing the event. Of course, if you are organizing an event, this is your chance to make it exceptional. And what I mean by exceptional is the exception to the norm. You may not really need to do much extra. You just have to spend a little extra time. There's a bit of a gray area in terms of seeking people from diverse groups. And to get this diversity of thought, you have to actually find different people. And there's no other way to put it. How you go about that is up to you. But I've been accused of, as you may know, positive discrimination, positive action, reverse discrimination. There's a lot of names for it. And I have kind of waved the flag and stood my ground and said, well, until we have that equity that we're looking for and, representation, then I'm going to keep giving certain people from certain groups an extra chance. Going back to the benefits, yet again, your efforts will be noticed by others. So if you are in a business that relies on clients or customers and what business doesn't really. I think nowadays people will notice, as I say, but that will create a certain feeling, an emotion, loyalty, and perhaps it could lead to more business. So now we have to be really careful. We're not leading with that because that's called greenwashing, pinkwashing, other kinds of washing. We're not doing it so that we look like we're being inclusive. We're doing it because it's the right thing to do. Now, I would welcome your thoughts. Here's the point in the conversation. Well, this is not a conversation, it's a monologue. But here's the point where I wish we were all chatting together, because I really would like to hear your point of view on this and your thoughts on this. To encourage true diversity of thought, I think we need to be allowing comments on our blogs. I called somebody out on this, somebody with quite a big profile, big name. You would know the person. And I said to them, why do you not allow comments on your blog? And they gave me some excuse, like they don't have time to curate them. I'm sorry, you could get your team to look at them, answer the easy ones, just acknowledge them. I think really what they were worried about was creating some kind of heated argument online. And let's face it, some people are not thoughtful. Some people don't remember to be respectful, and their content, their communication, it can be hurtful and really can make the whole experience a bit negative. But I said to this person, you're just like dictating your thoughts, and people aren't able to even like them, much less comment. I'm not going to say any more because then you might realize who it is. Well, the thought leader, and certainly the thoughtful leader, puts their views across thoughtfully and accepts that there will be people who agree and people who don't agree. You may or may not know that I'm a Spanish speaker as well as Anglophone. Well, one of the words that I always found really interesting when I started learning Spanish at 9 years old was the word for argument. Well, I was going to say discussion because it's discutir. And we learned very early on that discutir has typically a negative connotation. So what you might call a discussion, some people would call an argument, and others might call it a debate. And maybe that's a more accurate definition. It doesn't matter. I'm playing with words now, and you're thinking, where is she going with this? Where I'm going with it is this. If you approach a conversation thoughtfully, and of course, every piece of communication can be a conversation, even this one. I'll talk about that in a minute. If you approach all conversations thoughtfully with the correct intention, you, in fact, can learn a lot from diverse voices, diversity of thought, different people's thoughts that you may not have appreciated or even heard before. That's been my experience. So let's talk about things like a podcast where you are the only person talking. Yes, that's me today. This could be considered a monologue. What I like to do is absolutely obsess with you, the listener, and really aim to have a two-way conversation. Of course, it's not a real-time two-way conversation. However, approaching it like that allows me to pretend that we're talking. And if we're talking together, then the response will come. Now, that response will come in many different ways. Now, here's been my experience. People message me or respond on the social media post where I've shared this podcast episode. People will post their own stuff and give me a tag or a mention. And we will get into conversations somewhere, sometime. That's the way I approach it. You may not agree. Hey, great. Another vote for diversity of thought. We can agree to disagree. I think every communication, even one where you are the only one talking, allegedly, is a two-way conversation. And you will be advised to welcome the responses that come, seek them out, and extend that conversation into different media. So that's what I advise. I'm going to finish up in a few minutes. I'm going to just finish with some stories of people who have made the extra effort. And I think a clue is in the name. I've been reaching out to people who are proponents of diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI. And it's so fascinating. Again, I wasn't connected to that many people because it wasn't on my radar, and I left it all to chance. So I had to really seek them out. I had to do some research. I've chosen to spend a lot of time online. And there are too many people to list. But if you are interested in creating more inclusivity, creating more diversity in your work, it's very simple. If you're doing a search on LinkedIn or any other platform, search for those words, diversity, equity, inclusion, and the acronym DE&I, and you will find thousands of people to connect with. So if this is important to you, and if this discussion has made you think about your own efforts and your own ability and experience in encouraging diversity, and you would like to do more, well, that's a very simple place to start, because people have used the hashtags or simply have those words in their profiles. As I said, I'm not a big fan of greenwashing, pinkwashing, or any kind of washing. Well, I'm a fan of washing, but you know what I mean. And we're not talking about people just using the phrase so that they get brownie points. I'm talking about people who are walking the talk. When you find them, really, really listen to them. Watch who they are featuring, and you'll be amazed at how many diverse voices are out there. And you can connect with their contacts and people they recommend. So to me, that's a smart way to do things. I will call those DE&I experts the conduits. I think they know they are. I hope they know they are. And if you are one, I applaud you. If you're really, really pushing to create that level playing field, because it is time, and we are making up for decades and centuries of inequity. Let's be honest. It's up to us what we do with that and what we do about that. But diversity of thought is available to all of us for our communications, for our books. I haven't even spoken about books. You know how I feel about that. And I put my money where my mouth is in terms of giving special treatment and special offers to people from underrepresented groups if it enables them to write their book and get their voice heard. That's what I've chosen to do, in addition to really working hard to create a diverse guest list for this podcast. So what would you like to do? I appreciate you can't answer me now because we've already covered that, but answer me somewhere. If you've listened to this episode and it speaks to you, great. Do something with that and then let us know what you're doing with that. And don't be shy about being vocal and visible in your efforts. Yes, you may get some people who think that you're playing some kind of tokenism game. That's up to them to think that, right? That's their thought, and that adds to the diversity of thought. But you know what you're doing. You know why you're doing it. If you really want to get involved, connect with me and we will do some great work together. The thoughtful leader is here to change the world. You are part of that. And I applaud you for everything you've been doing and everything that you are intending to do. And I look forward to having a proper discussion with you soon. Take care and speak to you soon. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of The Thoughtful Leader, and I hope it's inspired you to be more thoughtful as a leader in your business. Please consider subscribing and leaving a review. An important question for you. Do you want to create a culture of thought leadership in your organization? My best-selling book, The Thoughtful Leader, is available now on Amazon and many other sites in paperback, ebook, and audiobook formats. Please visit www.mindygk.com for more great content. That's www.mindygk.com. Speak to you again soon.